Checking in with Ohio Northern University to find out about how the students are being very active. Joining us today, Ohio Northern University political science professor, Dr. Rob Alexander. And then we have Kennedy Aikey. She is Ohio Northern. She's a double major. She's political science and criminal justice major. And thank you very much for joining us today, you guys.
Thanks for having us, Holly.
Okay, so Rob, let's start with you first, because I know you encourage your students to be very active. When you were joking that, you know, your students are the ones that are, you know, carrying you along, but they're really into voting and making sure students know what they're doing at the polls, right?
Yeah, we have such an unbelievable group of students, and I've been very fortunate to be able to work with our poli-sci students in particular, but students across campus as well. And we have a number of initiatives working through our Institute for Civics and Public Policy, which we call ICAP. And Kennedy is a fellow for ICAP. And they've already done a number of initiatives this fall, including one of my favorites, which is to get an ONU Votes page up. And this is a kind of a one-stop shop page for students, but anybody really in the public. It was important for us to make this something that could be accessed by anybody in the community to see whether or not your registration has changed, to take a look at when the deadlines are for early voting, mail-in voting, actual voting, absentee voting, to even sign up to be a poll worker. And even for our students at ONU to see how their major might be connected to politics, because sometimes people don't understand that politics pervades our everyday lives, and so, you know, there's lots of different things there at that ONU Votes page, and we encourage everybody to take a look at it.
Yeah, Kennedy, which your last name is Ikea, not IKEA. But anyway, I'm sorry, I realized I did that. Kennedy, it's important then, I guess, for your fellow students to make sure they're educated and informed and get out to the polls?
Yeah, absolutely. It's super important to reach out to people in all the majors. And like Dr. A said, having that part of the page where you can see how your major is specifically impacted by politics is super important, because all students across ONU can see how voting can impact their future.
And you're worried about other issues too. Through ICAP, you've done a podcast, I guess, about opioid crisis in Ohio. So talk a little bit more about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So me and another ICAP fellow, her name is Carmen Mancuso. She's a sophomore. We have a podcast called Uncap It. And on that podcast, we just talk about Gen Z related issues and how they're impacting us. And our most recent episode, which just came out today actually, focuses on the opioid epidemic, specifically in Ohio, but also around the world and around the country. And we sit down with an ONU criminal justice and sociology professor, and he talks about how it's impacting us, how politics have impacted the opioid crisis, and what we can do in the future to try to help this and come up with solutions for this problem.
So even on campus, you guys are worried about, you know, the drug addiction and that kind of thing, and that's why you want to raise awareness?
Absolutely. You know, we always hear that the opioid epidemic is in our backyard. And on the podcast, we really just wanted to discuss what that really means and who's really impacted by this, because it's not the typical people that we think of that would be addicted to opioids or prescription drugs. And so we really just want to get awareness out there that this is a problem that could impact anybody.
So, Rob, it sounds like, you know, that through this institute that you guys really have your students thinking outside the box and about issues that concern them.
Yeah, they deal with a lot of different types of issues. As I said before, politics pervades our lives in so many different ways. And I think like Kennedy and her co-host and others that work with the Institute would never have imagined when they went off to college that they'd be examining the types of issues that they are, whether it be the opioid crisis, whether it be the effects of ChatGPT in our daily lives, obviously COVID and COVID learning loss. I mean, they have examined a lot of different types of issues over the last couple of years to kind of show, you know, ONU was founded by Henry Solomon Luhr, who believed in experiential education. And one of the things that they've learned is that, you know, you have to experience things, you have to go out there and see things and do things. And you know, that connection between theory and practice is something that's deep in ONU's DNA. And that's exactly what they've been doing with this institute.
Very cool stuff, and thank you again for doing ONU Votes. We can all check out that website and get better informed. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Holly.
All right, don't go away. Noon Edition continues in a moment.